to the petition number 1967, which is the A82. Maurice Golden.
Thanks. So, move slightly closer to home, I suppose. This is a petition that calls on the Scottish Government to protect Loch Lomond's Atlantic Oakwood shoreline by implementing the high road option for the A82 upgrade between Tarbert and Inverannan, one of 3 options considered by Transport Scotland during early project assessment. The petitioners have written to the committee on the 19th of March of this year stating that, and I quote, "We are demanding Transport for Scotland conducts a full stag appraisal of the A82 Tarbert to Inverannan project as required by law." Cabinet Secretary, what assurance can be offered that Transport Scotland has fully complied with its legal obligations?
So central to that petition is the point you're raising about a request on a stag process to be applied. So concerns regarding the application of stag guidance on the A82 Tarbert to Inverannan scheme was raised with separately with Audit Scotland. So you're looking for a reassurance. It was raised separately with Audit Scotland in similar terms to those put forward in the petition. Audit Scotland investigated and confirmed to Transport Scotland, and I understand the petitioner, on they contacted Transport Scotland at least on the 15th of November 2022, that they had considered the requirements contained in the stag guidance and reviewed relevant evidence, and the auditor concluded that the stag process has been applied at the initial stages of the work on the A82.
Thanks for that. It's useful to get that on the record. Cabinet Secretary, earlier you mentioned different views, and I think that's one aspect of this petition, particularly supporting the high road option. And I know some correspondence from the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park Authority with regard to this. I wonder if you could, Cabinet Secretary, take us through the timeline for this particular upgrade and any consideration that you would like to put on the record regarding the high road option.
So clearly this one has completed certain of the phases. There are still issues as to whether in the next phase there would be any objections raised or indeed a public inquiry. There are strong feelings about this. People understand there are strong feelings actually about most roads in most places, but I think the issue there is probably one in relation to the landscaping and the natural environment in relation to the loch. Obviously, the early stages that the process has to address, and also indeed the 5 stages when it gets to the outline and strategic business case, have to look at environmental as well as economic, etc. areas. And I think one of the key things probably to relay is that consideration is being given to the feasibility and attractiveness of the route that has been chosen, which obviously the petitioners don't like. The consideration is being given to the feasibility and attractiveness of combining with adjacent schemes to look about how we can make sure that the tree line and the environment aspects are considered as part of that. So I think there's still time to go in terms of that process to address that particular point. I think there's also, a really important point to be upfront and candid about, and that is because of the interaction between the A82 and the A83, and the A82 being used particularly when there's problems with the A83, that we do not think it's appropriate to do work consecutive or at the same time on the A83 and the A82, and because of the safety issues and the importance to the economy and people of Argyll in particular, we would prioritise the A83 over the A82. So that's, I think, probably important to have on the record.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you. And again, Jackie Bailey.
Thank you very much, Convener. I've maybe got slightly more to say about this petition. Can I maybe...
But within reason.
Oh, okay. I'll hope you'll indulge me. I think, Cabinet Secretary, to date, the consultants employed by Transport Scotland have spent something like £19 million. Would you be aware that Work Package 1 of the contract actually requires the stag appraisal, which hasn't been done? Are you also aware that a design for the active travel route alongside the A82, as promised, also hasn't been done. And there have been suggestions that some of the cost estimates may be slightly inaccurate. And I wonder whether there would be a useful meeting to be had between the petitioners, Transport Scotland, and indeed the National Park, to just understand some of this. Whilst I'm talking about the National Park, let me add on a second question. At what date, if there have been any discussions with the National Park, did these take place? And the reason I ask that, you'll appreciate, because I think you know the area, just how sensitive that bit of the A82 is as it borders Loch Lomond. There is plans for the National Park to regenerate and extend Atlantic Oakwood and the natural habitat corridors that exist there. And it strikes me that the low road option is probably the least sensitive in terms of respecting that environment. So 2 questions rolled into one, convener.
Okay, there is a lot in this, and with your agreement, I'll ask Nicola Blaney to come in a second. But just to reassure the member, I have met with the National Park more generally. I'm very impressed with what they're trying to do in active travel generally in that area, and absolutely understand their interests, and clearly as they have a statutory role in terms of planning, so I can understand where they will sit within this. I would say to the committee that by and large people want roads to happen as opposed to not want roads to happen, and people will want an improvement to the A82, but it's which one, and I can understand the sensitivity around this and appreciate that, and people feel very strongly about it. I think in terms of the petition, I think the petition has been dealt with in relation to has there been an earlier stag appraisal, and that's been, as in my answer to Maurice Golden, actually then been assessed by Audit Scotland and confirmed. So that's on that. It doesn't mean that there isn't continuing, or probably for the next Parliament as well, continuing interest in this road. I get it, and I appreciate the strength of feeling from the petitioners on that. But from a technical point of view, I think the petition has probably been dealt with. In relation, therefore, to those specifics about costs, I don't know where the sources are, but and the point,
FOI.
All right, okay. So that's
from you.
All right, thank you very much. We're very open and provide lots of information all the time. And in terms of, but communications is really important, and sometimes people just understanding what we've done, how we've done it, what the process is, can go a long way, and then you can focus in what are the real points of difference. And sometimes they can be resolved, but sometimes they can't be. But therefore, I think openness in that is quite helpful as well. And also in relation to the active travel route, that's something where, generally we try and ensure that there is that provision. But again, it will be probably in the timing and sequencing of what happens. We'll need to address that. But Nicola may have more technical detail on that. I think is probably where Jackie Bailey is coming from. So Nicola, do you want to help with this?
Yeah. Okay. So the Scottish Transport Appraisal Guidance and the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges are both pieces of guidance which, when adhered to, I would say represents good practice in the development of transport projects in Scotland. However, they're not applied at the same time or for the same reasons. I think I mentioned that earlier on. An appraisal is undertaken to look at a geographical area, and this informs the strategic business case. So the problems and opportunities that an area is facing is looked at, and that helps determine what we would call a case for change. Then a long list of options, often across all modes, is considered against a multi-criteria. And then that list is refined until you have an intervention or a package of interventions to then be taken forward. Whereas the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges is applied once that intervention for a road scheme has been determined. And at that point, I think I mentioned earlier on as well, you are assessing route options, which principally informs the outline business case stage. So STAG is not a replacement for mode-specific design processes, which would then follow on from the completed transport appraisal. I understand that the 82 Turnveran Upgrade Strategic Business Case report was published, and that built on the evidence from the National Transport Appraisal, the first Strategic Transport Projects Review, which was published, I think, October 2009. So that hopefully is helpful in setting out that context and where the differences are. I don't think there's probably much else I would add to that.
I think the only thing is actually it might be, if it's helpful for particularly in relation to, I would expect national park discussions, not withstanding the current processes, but that openness with the national park and to meet with them to go through where we are and what the implications are, and anything on the active travel route as well would be helpful.
There's been continuing dialogue with the National Park with the detail of the scheme and the makeup of the scheme, and one of the fundamental things is having the active travel facility through the whole of the scheme and incorporating that in a sympathetic way. So that is quite a challenge. The topography is obviously quite demanding alongside Loch Lomond and the surrounding hills there. So it is quite a difficult scheme to take forward, but it's been progressed in a sympathetic manner with due regard to all of the other environmental issues. You talked about the trees and all the flora and fauna in that area, and trying to make sure that as much of that is maintained as possible, and looking at how it can be replicated in various other parts of the route as we develop the scheme further, as we go towards draft orders.
Quick supplementary.
Oh, I'll try and be quick, Convener. I think the petitioners who are in the public gallery understand your reasoning but disagree with it, and therefore were quite surprised to see reference within Work Package 1 to the requirement for a stag appraisal. So I don't know whether that was just missed by officials or not. I'm interested then in your views on this being the best route in terms of traffic hold-ups, because you'll appreciate the A82 is an extremely busy route. If you actually construct on the existing route, the hold-ups will be a nightmare. They'll be catastrophic for that area. And so a high road option is, I think, better. I wonder what analysis you've done of the resilience of roads, of the traffic disturbance that would be caused by sticking to that route.
That's not a level of detail in terms of the traffic management and engineering that I will apply my capabilities at, but I'll ask officials.
Yeah. So I think.
Alistair Graham. Yeah. So it says your game view is.
This is yours, access.
We should properly acknowledge your contribution as it starts.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, so as part of the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges Stage 3 assessment, which is the detailed development assessment of the preferred option, you know, constructability is one of the key issues that we will be, well, we are looking at that, and we'll continue for that to evolve. And, you know, and we obviously are consulting with the National Park, as Lawrence Shackman has highlighted already, and so it's making sure that we minimise any disruption during the construction phases, and that work is ongoing at the moment, and that will continue to be developed. And when we get to the end of the DMRB Stage 3 assessment, you know, reports will then be published at that stage, which will outline the developed preferred option and what impacts it would have during construction.
Supplementary. But very
absolutely,
brief. Thank
but
you,
genuinely, as a local who uses that road, where are you going to divert people to? Are we going to have to go on to the loch to get round the construction? Because, frankly, that's the only way it's going to work. It is the most challenging roads project.
And yeah, that's acknowledged.
So I thought we were saying yes, we'd have to go into the loch there. No.
I think obviously as part of the ultimately, since it's an online, there will be closures of the road. Yeah, that would be, and but that work could be minimised as much as possible. You know, we'll try and minimise that as much as possible during the work that we're undertaking at the moment. And you know, we will be striving to keep one lane open during construction phases, so traffic can still use that during construction.
And that's regular. Yeah. However challenging and difficult it is, that has happened. But I think acknowledging that is a major kind of route, and that's one of the reasons why we're not going to be able to do it at the same time as the A3. You know, I think everybody's fully aware of that. So the issue is, you know, it's a case of you know, the handling and the management of this, and it will be some time to come. Will be very, very important indeed. In terms of how you manage that. But as I said in my general remarks, you can't improve roads or have new projects without disruption. The issue is how that disruption is handled.
Absolutely, but I think just the point to make is not that we're against road building. There is a better alternative, Convener.
Stated, I feel in my bones that a subsequent Petitions Committee is going to be revisiting this issue in the next Parliament. That brings us then finally to the petition number 2130.